I'm back from the Confrontation 3 tournament, and it's time to find out how I got on with my Necron Tournament List 8th edition.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. And if you're new to the channel and you want to keep up to date with the Wonders of Warhammer 40k, then please subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss an upload. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about my tournament that I've just been to, the Confrontation 3 tournament. This is an 1800 point event using modified chapter approved missions. The restrictions were no Forge World, no duplicate detachments, and some restrictions on the painting when using different factions. Now, it was these painting restrictions that took me on an interesting journey when developing my army list. I ended up with single dynasty, single faction. Now, the journey has been catalogued on the channel in various videos. I actually have a playlist with all of those videos in, so if you're interested in watching that, I'll link you up to that in the description below. In today's video though, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the list that I took. So I took Imitek the Stormlord, giving me 1 extra command point and allowing me to try and get some command points back during the game. He also gave me double My Will Be Done. He had Core the Storm, giving me some mortal wounds in the army, and he had the ability to be fairly survivable with his 2+ save and 4+ invulnerable save. I then had a Cryptic with a Canoptic Cloak, allowing me to keep up with some of my other fast moving units, giving them the 4+ RP, and of course he can do Living Metal of D3 as well. I had 4 fast attack choices in total. I had 2 units of Destroyers maxed out, I had a unit of Wraiths, 5 Wraiths, 1 with a Particle Caster because I had a few points left over, and then 1 unit of 6 Scarab Swarms. Now, backing up the force, I had a Triarch Stalker with a twin Gauze Cannon and then 2 Doomsday Arcs. The Triarch Stalker allowing the Doomsday Arc to reroll the ones on the hits, even though I'm in the Sotek Dynasty. And that was my list, 1799 points and 5 command points. Now, I managed to play 3 practice games with my final list. However, in the build up to the event, we got quite a few games in with the missions we were using. We were using chapter approved Eternal War missions with fixed deployment zones. Now, I practiced against quite a number of different armies. I played Richard from Capitan Morgan's Wargames. He had his Space Wolves, his Eldar and Dark Eldar combo, and also his 1000 Suns with Magnus. I practiced against Nick from Old Average Bit Gaming, where he brought his Imperial Knights to my house and we played a game with that. And of course I practiced with Ace Face, who also went to the event. He brought his 1000 Suns list with Magnus and Mortarion in it. It was pretty clear that this was going to be a hard-hitting first turn event. So I was having a look at the missions and how you score points and working out how I thought I was going to do with my army. Now, the scoring system for the event was quite interesting. To get a major victory and earn yourself 20 points, you either had to table your opponent or you had to beat them by more than 10 points. That's quite a big margin to get a major victory. So if you got a win but it was less than 10 points, you got a minor victory, and that gave you 13 points. If it was equal, then you got 10 points each. If you lost but it was less than 10 points, you got 7 points, and if you lost totally, you got 0 points. So I went with the mindset that in an ideal world, of course, I would love to win a few games. However, I went in thinking to myself, if I could get at least a minor victory from each game, earn a few points from each game, then I think I would be happy, especially if you consider where Necrons are at the moment. So it was the day of the tournament. I went with Ace Face and Richard, and this is what's happened. Okay, so here we are on our way. Thank you, Ace, for driving us. We are currently on the motorway, so he's not going to look at the camera too much. And there we are, Richard in the background. So, Rich, looking forward to this?
Oh yeah, well, it's always good to get it on tournament. get going.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. This is only my third event, so at least now I know what to expect, and I'm definitely expecting to have some fun. So yeah, let's get to the event. More to come. Okay, so here we are. We are in the process of setting up our armies. Just scan around and I'll show you the table that I am on. I don't know who I'm facing yet, my opponent hasn't turned up, as you can see. It's pretty busy. The terrain looks pretty decent, a reasonable amount on there. And this is my table. So we've got a ruined city theme going on. Got my army set up, so just waiting for the opponent now and for things to kick off. Okay, so we are just setting up. I am playing Mike here, and he has his Orcs, which is, I'm really looking forward to this, to be fair. I love playing Orcs. He's got 180 models. Yeah, this is going to be fun. As you can see, we are going to be basically facing off. We're playing Scorched Earth, 6 objectives. This is going to be fun. Okay, so game 1 was against Orcs. I was not expecting that. I've been practicing against these hard-hitting, multi-wounded creatures, and I was facing 180 Orcs. Now, the game that we were playing was Scorched Earth. That's 6 objectives. We placed 3 each. Each objective is worth 1 point at the end of your turn, and you have the option to explode your opponent's objective if it's in their deployment zone, gaining you 2 objective points. I placed my 3 objectives, one on the left high up for a Doomsday Ark to sit on, one on the right high up with the other Doomsday Ark to sit on, and one in the middle where my blob was. I managed to get first turn. First of all, I called the storm. There was a massive blob of Orcs, and actually Imitech did very well, taking a good amount of Orcs out. I actually rolled quite a lot of 6s on the surrounding units. I did quite a lot of mortal wounds, which was a great start. And then I concentrated all of my firepower on his rocket boys. He had no tanks, so my Doomsday Arks were a bit wasted. Now, Mike told me he went for an anti-meta list, so he had nothing really with multiple wounds. On his first turn, he sent the remaining rocket boys forward. They moved very quickly, which I already knew from playing my buddy's Orcs. And then he did the jump, and he sent another unit across the table. He managed to get into the assault, even though I took a chunk of Orcs down from Overwatch, and also the assault itself didn't really kill that much. But what it did do, as he was super scoring with troops, he was able to score the objective, and not only that, he exploded it. Now, I've never seen anyone explode an objective before. It's not a tactic that I would want to use, and obviously none of my opponents would. However, I soon realised it was a great tactic for Orcs, and I also realised I'd made my first mistake. I should have deployed my objectives outside of my deployment zone so that he couldn't explode them. Now, Mike said that this mission was the perfect mission for his army out of the missions that we had. On the second turn, he managed to take out my objective by the Doomsday Ark with another unit, leaving me just with 1 objective on my side. Now, I killed a massive chunk, a massive amount of Orcs. However, he was still able to score 3 victory points each turn on his side, whereas I was only scoring 1. Now, I managed to clear him off of 1 objective on his side. I used the Veil of Darkness, I concentrated firepower on that particular unit, and I managed to steal it back from him. However, by the end of the game, it just wasn't enough. Now, the game ended on turn 5, and I had to do a lot of work to try and avoid a major loss. As I said, you've got to get more than 10 victory points to get a major win, major loss situation. So I worked really hard, I focused on that objective, I managed to get line breaker, and in the end, after turn 5 and we ran out of time, we got to a point of 19 points for the Orcs and 10 points for the Necrons, so a minor loss, which under the circumstances I was actually quite pleased with. Remember, I only had 28 models and he had 180. I just didn't have the guns to clear him totally, although, as I said, I took a massive chunk of his army away. It was a perfect game of 40k. Mike was an absolute gentleman on the table, really nice guy, and the game itself was just like playing your buddies at home. I really enjoyed it, and I was pumped for game 2. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so here we go, game 2, and I am playing Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hey.
Looking forward to this game. Chris has a full Dark Eldar army, so this is going to be interesting. I've only played against Dark Eldar once. We're playing Ascension, 3 objectives in the middle. HQs are super scoring. I've deployed at the back here, so let's see what happens in game 2. Okay, so game 2, which was Ascension. So 3 objectives in the middle. You scored a point each time you were on the objective at the end of your turn, and if you had a HQ on there, you built up more points the longer the HQ was on the objective. Now I was up against Chris and his Dark Eldar army. Now I'd faced a little bit of Dark Eldar with Richard, and of course I have a Dark Eldar army myself, although I haven't played them in 8th edition. Now we deployed, and I did make a little mistake on deployment. I put down Imatech, and I was supposed to put down the Cryptek next, allowing me to surround them with my destroyers. However, I put down Imatech, and then I went straight on to the destroyers. In actual fact, I didn't leave enough space to get my Cryptek down on the table in the middle of that blob. So I turned to Chris and said, do you have any deep strikers? Thinking I could just put him at the back if he didn't, and he didn't have any deep strikers. He had Venoms, he had Raiders, he had the Ravager, he had some Incubi I think it was, obviously he had lots of splinter cannons, and he had a flyer sitting right at the back of the table. This was a hammer and anvil deployment, so I just put my Cryptek at the back of my destroyer blob. Now I lost first turn, and that's when I discovered that I actually made quite a big mistake just putting him at the back, because Chris moved his flyer a whopping 60 inches right into my deployment zone, putting it right next to my Cryptek. Of course, I did make a mistake and the Cryptek did go down. I also lost a whole unit of destroyers from shooting, where everything piled all of their guns into that unit. So I lost first blood and I lost my Cryptek on turn 1. Not a great start. However, on my turn I used a stratagem to get the character back up, and I managed to get my Cryptek back up. I think I was quite lucky there. And then I went to work on destroying some of his army. Obviously they're quite fragile, and my guns at close range can do a lot of damage. It was quite an interesting game as we built up our victory points for the objectives on equal terms. We scored 2 points each on turn 1, 2 points on turn 2, 3 points on turn 3, and 4 points each on turn 4. However, Chris built up a lot of his points with an Archon sitting on one objective. By the end of the game, that was scoring him 3 points per turn. I couldn't get to that character to try and stop him from doing that. I was building up my points from dominating the other objectives on the table. As I said, it was very interesting. We destroyed a good amount of each other's army, and in the end it was just a victory by 1 point to the Dark Eldar. In actual fact, it was that first blood that cost me the game. So it was 11 points to 12 points to the Dark Eldar, giving me another minor loss. I was pretty happy with that, and to be fair, if I hadn't lost first turn and a whole unit of destroyers in that first turn, then maybe I could have switched that around to a minor victory rather than a minor loss. So 2 minor losses. I'm building up some points, and we're going in to the last game of the day. Okay, so game 3, and I am playing Craig. Hello, Craig. And Craig has his towels. Lots of Pathfinders. There's 2 Riptides, and looks like drones as well. And we've got these stealth suit things here. And I have deployed in my deployment zone. We are playing the 2 quarters, 6 objectives, and kill points as well. It's going to be an interesting game 3. Okay, so game 3 was dominate and destroy. So we were using table quarters. Basically 6 objectives. You got a point for each objective at the end of your turn, and you got kill points for every unit that you destroyed. Now I hadn't actually beaten Tau in a very long time. Probably back in 5th edition was the last time I beat them. However, with some pre-planning before the event on how I was going to deploy my objectives, things went very well for me. Now I was playing Craig, who had a couple of Riptides with the usual drones surrounding them. He had some Pathfinder units and he had some stealth suits who did some infiltrating. Now I managed to get first turn and I got first blood by killing one of the infiltrating stealth suits with my wraiths. Now Craig didn't really know much about Necrons, except he knew you had to target one unit at a time. So I managed to get 8 points on turn 1 from killing the small squishy units and grabbing 3 objectives. It was a great first turn for me and put me in good stead for the rest of the game. Now we both got a reasonable amount of victory points during the game. Chris managed to get 3 on turn 1, 6 on turn 2, 3 on turn 3, 6 on turn 4 and then 3 on turn 5. However, I got 8 on turn 1, 5 on turn 2, 5 on turn 3, 4 on turn 4 and 4 on turn 5. We both managed to get line breaker, but I got a whopping 27 victory points and Chris got 23. So not a major win, but it was at least a minor victory in my last game of the day, so I could go home with a win. Yay! Really enjoyed the game, really enjoyed the day. I had 3 great games, and as I said, it was just like playing your buddies at home. A wonderful first day. I then went home with Richard and Aceface. We played some Shadespire, we played some Attack Wing, we chilled out, ready for day 2. Okay, so here we are, day 2, and the sun is shining. It's early in the morning, and we are travelling to day 2. So, Ace, you did quite well yesterday. You got 2 wins and a loss, yeah?
Yeah, 2 max wins and a max loss, so not too bad.
So, potentially, if you win your next game, you could end up pretty near the top table.
Yeah, I think 2 max wins is a potential of a podium, but we'll have to wait and see. Definitely 2 max wins will put me in top 5. So, I'd take that, 100%.
Yeah. And Richard, you won your first game tabling, yeah?
Yeah.
Are there second 2 games a loss, is that right?
Yeah, well, a major loss in the tabling in the last game.
Right,
I came down to a dice off at the start.
So if you start off well, and we already know you're playing Dark Eldar.
Yeah, it's a volume of shots against them. If I can reduce the number of shots coming in turn 1, I'd be more than happy going through the rest of the game.
Okay, so that is it, of course. Myself, going to be looking, it's going to be interesting because this is end of turn objective grabbing. So let's hope I've got some army left by the end of the turn. Let's find out in today's events. Okay, so here we go, game 4, and I'm playing Andy. Hello, Andy.
Hi.
Andy has brought his Tzeentch demons, yeah? Yeah. And we are playing the mission supply drop, so 6 objectives, but we will end up with only 2 at the end. We are ready to start playing this game, so let's get cracking. Okay, so day 2, and I was up against Tzeentch demons. I was playing Andy. Now Andy was a really nice guy, and I had a lot of fun in this game. Now this mission is 6 objectives, and at the beginning of turn 3 you select 3 objectives each, and then 2 of them disappear, so you end up with 2 objectives. Now Andy had the Fate Weaver, he had a big squad of Screamers, a couple of squads of Horrors, he had some pink Horrors in reserve, and I think he had the Brimstone Horrors at the back on his objectives. Now I managed to get turn 1. Now I could have targeted the Fate Weaver, however I was looking for first blood in this game, because ultimately with 2 objectives, if you have 1 objective each, it's the secondary objectives which win you the game. So first blood for me was the key thing to get. So I targeted his Screamers. The Screamers are quite fast and can be quite nasty as well. So I targeted everything at them and I managed to take them down, giving me first blood. Any of the leftover shots I put into the Screamers. Now on Andy's first turn he advanced up. He managed to do a reasonable amount of damage, but I got quite lucky and I managed to reanimate pretty much everything that he killed on the first turn. I think I just lost 1 destroyer after reanimation. I continued then to target his units. In turn 2 I took the Fate Weaver down and gradually destroyed his army. He held the pink horrors back till turn 3, which by then we found out where the objectives were. It turned out the middle objective was live and the one in my backfield was live also. I did a tactical retreat, stopping his pink horrors, getting into my deployment zone. So by turn 3 it was pretty obvious that I was going to win this game, and I could have just sat back and just taken a minor win. However, I wanted to get a maximum amount of points if I could. So I went all out to try and table my opponents. That was the only way in this mission that you could actually get maximum points. So I went to work on the little guys at the back. I sent the wraiths forward using the stratagem allowing me to advance and assault. I assaulted the little guys at the back. I then teleported with the Veil of Darkness, a unit of destroyers, into his deployment zone, and I whittled his army down. We went all the way to turn 5 until I finally took out his last brimstone horror, giving me a major victory. So I was really happy with the result. I had to work very hard to get a major victory from that game, and of course that gave me the maximum amount of points, pushing me up the table for the last game. So let's have a look at game 5. Okay, so game 5. Now I didn't actually record any footage, I totally forgot. Actually, you'll notice as the games went on I did less and less videoing. However, I was up against Natalie and she was playing Imperial Guard. She basically had a tank army, tanks everywhere. She had a Baneblade, she had some tanks with some big guns, and she had some mortar type tanks. She had some troops, she had a few squads of Scions and another unit of troops as well. Now we were playing frontline assault, 4 objectives, 2 in the middle worth 2 points each and 1 in each of our deployment zones. The deployment zone ones were worth 1 point to us and 4 points to our opponent. Now I made a massive mistake in this game. I got first turn, which was great, however I totally forgot to move. Now I'm not sure why this was, whether it was just because I was tired from the day's events or what, but I did forget to move. Now I pretended that that was all part of the plan, so I didn't let it faze me, and in actual fact I did reasonably well on first turn. I managed to take a tank out and I got first blood. I used Imitex, Core the Storm, I did a few mortal wounds here and there, and it was reasonably successful first turn. Now I was playing Natalie and she was a lovely girl. She didn't really know Necrons that well. However, she was a very quick learner, but it did sort of save my bacon a little bit in turn 1. So first of all she targeted a Doomsday Ark. Now of course with my quantum shielding that took a reasonable amount of firepower to take it out. However, she did manage to take it out, and with the rest of the guns she started targeting my destroyers. She killed 3 from 1 unit, and as you would expect from a normal 40k game, the ideal thing would be then to move on to another unit after weakening the first unit. So she killed 3 from 1 destroyer unit and 2 from the second destroyer unit, rather than targeting 1 whole unit. Now in my second turn I managed to reanimate a good amount of those destroyers. I think in the end I only lost 1 destroyer, which was very useful indeed, and as I said, that saved my bacon a little bit. However, it was pretty obvious this was going to be a very tough game for me. All of her tanks were very long ranged and also didn't need line of sight, so I had to come up with a plan very quickly. So in turn 2 I decided that I was going to go for a minor loss. I couldn't win this game and I'd be happy with a minor loss. As I said, my aim was to get some points from each of the game. So I played towards not being tabled and not getting a major loss. I worked out the victory points on the table and it was actually quite difficult to get more than 10 victory points. So if I could just survive this game, it would be a minor loss and I'd be happy. So what I decided to do was target the tanks that didn't need line of sight, allowing me to maybe hide some of my scarabs and my HQs to stop me being tabled. And that's what I did. I sent the wraiths up, I advanced them, I got into assault with a couple of tanks, reducing their firepower. My destroyers I had trouble with because of their 24-inch guns. The Baneblade was up front. I shot into the Baneblade, I took it down to about 14 wounds. Also shot a few other tanks that didn't need line of sight. I did a reasonable amount of damage, but ultimately it just wasn't enough, and as I said, I was actually playing for that. Now I managed to teleport my Cryptic and Imatech over into the far left hand corner. I gave Natalie all of the objectives, as I said that was the plan. She took the objectives, she managed to destroy all of my army apart from those two characters and the Scarab Swarms which were hiding in front of them to try and make the characters not the nearest target. So I managed to take Natalie all the way to her turn 5. In her turn 5 she was targeting my 3 units that were left. She managed to get rid of the Scarab Swarms and then one character, and then finally the last character. I tried to use the stratagem to get the character back up. I only had 1 command points left. You need a 4 to get the character back up, and I rolled a 3, so I ended up being tabled. I didn't get my minor loss that I was playing for. So that was the end of the tournament. I ended up with a major win, a minor win, 2 minor losses, and a major loss right at the end. So I managed to get 47 points out of 100 for the actual games themselves, plus we had painting points and sportsmanship points. Now that took me into 29th position out of 54, so just under halfway. I was pretty happy with that position. I did notice that no one voted me as their favourite game for the sportsmanship points. That was a little bit disappointing, to be honest. I thought I was quite friendly in my games. However, of course, maybe there were just even more friendlier people than myself. So something maybe for me to work on in the next tournament. Now the winning army was Eldar, and that was followed by Imperium. I believe it was an Imperial Knight army. The event was run very well. We had mats on all of the tables, we had terrain which was quite reasonable, and we had a raffle there as well for charity with some great prizes on offer. A really well run, friendly event, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The only criticism I had was the armies themselves. We had no list of what armies each person was playing, and also they lumped the army factions together, so we had like Xenos, Chaos and Imperium, which from a personal point of view, I was looking to be the best Necron player there. There was 2 other Necron players, but because of the way they announced the chart as such, I couldn't see where the other Necron players were placed. I know one of them I was above, but I'm not sure who the other player was. So that would be my only criticism with the event, but overall it was fantastic. Now looking at my actual army, there's 3 things to note. One would be the Wraiths. Now I used Wraiths instead of Tomb Blades because I have no Tomb Blade models. The Tomb Blades would definitely have been better in the list. The Wraiths didn't underperform, but as expected they were more of a distraction unit than a unit that was able to do that much damage. I think the Tomb Blades would have offered a bit more to the list, giving me another shooting unit and also keeping a speed unit on the table which the Wraiths had. So I think Tomb Blades would have been better in the list, but the Wraiths didn't underperform. Now in terms of Imatech, I really liked the double My Will Be Done. Not having to use a CP to get the double My Will Be Done on the destroyers was actually very useful. He also brought Call the Storm and also the bonuses to my CPs. Arguably a Catacomb Command Barge may have done more for the list than Imatech, but I still liked Imatech in the list. I think he brought some flavour and also some abilities to the army which I enjoyed. I am going to play test the army with the Command Barge instead of Imatech going forward. Now in terms of the Cryptic, I think I made the right choice with the Cloak Tech over the standard Cryptic. Yes, no 5+ invulnerable save, but the speed that Cryptic can move, especially after I teleport with the Veil of Darkness, proved to be very useful, so I think I made the right choice there. Now the Triox Stalker itself, to be fair, in any of the games that I played, hardly did any damage. Most of the time I was missing with it. However, it did help the Doomsday Arcs quite a lot, being able to re-roll the 1s, very useful, and it gave my opponents a different target priority, which I think was its key benefit. When they instantly see that the Triox Stalker is buffing the other units, that tended to be the first thing they shot rather than the actual Doomsday Arcs, and that helped my Doomsday Arcs survive a little bit more. So overall, I think the list itself, I was actually really happy with how it performed. I'm hoping a points reduction in chapter approved will help push me forward with an even better list. Now of course I'll be making more Necron videos in the build up to the chapter approved release, so hopefully you'll stay tuned for those. And if you're not subscribed, hit the Edict Beer icon so you can start now and keep up to date with the Wonders of Warhammer 40k. Beam me up!